Ian Henry here with Russ Farwell, Vice President of Hockey Operations, for another episode of Top Shelf. Today we're going to talk to Russ about Noah Barlage, a defenseman we selected in the 7th round of the Bantam Draft back in May. Russ, what did we like about Noah? What are the skills he brings to the table?
Well, I think work ethic was one of the real things that I remember Nevin talking about in our meeting, and really went to bat for him as a player that way. We think there's huge upside in our game. He's a young guy, and he's got lots of time yet to develop and get here. But I think real good work ethic, good hockey family, and we think he's a real good prospect for us. That's really at this point in time, he's just getting started, and it'll be a little while before he's in a position to play here, but we think he could develop and be a real steady guy for us.
Cal Filson, Director of Player Personnel after the draft, said that he's a guy that shuts other teams' best players down. Is that something that you can see from him in a couple of years? Yeah,
that's the kind of guy I think we're getting there. You know, a guy that you got to be tenacious and prepared to work hard to play against the other guy's best guys, and that's kind of what we see there. And you know, everyone wants to play offense, and that remains to be seen as a guy develops. But there's certain qualities that you can predict a guy's going to be able to play, and that's at that point in the draft. That's what we're hoping for. With that whole trouble that was in Saskatchewan, and they had to cancel that tournament this year, I didn't get to see Noah before the draft. So, but we had a pretty good handle, and the guys had done a good job before, so we were comfortable with the pick.
TBird fans, every WHL team has a 50-player protected list. It's the players on the roster, TBird Prospects. When you're at the draft and you're making picks, you can only make obviously as many picks as you have spots available on your 50-player list. Does that come into account the later you get into a draft with what type of player you pick or position you pick based on, okay, we might need another, you know, who's the best defensive prospect, who's the best forward prospect, goalie prospect? How does a 50-player list impact decisions later in the Bantam Draft rounds?
Well, if you try and pick a goalie generally and have some depth going through, and you vary how high a priority, we were real comfortable this year, and we picked the goalie that we thought had the best year as far as Bantam hockey was concerned. But other than that, you're pretty much just picking quality because there are ways to go yet. This year, we were so excited about some of the forwards that were still there early that we took a lot of forwards, and so we were a little later before we drafted defensemen. But that's just the way the draft went this year.
Does Noah compare, or could he compare to any current or former T-Bird in his style of play?
Well, not exactly. I hard to say. I mean, Harsh was a late pick for us. He's come on to be a real good Thunderbird, and Toretto was a similar case. I think Tyson will take a step this year, and that's what we're thinking. I don't know. It's hard to put that kind of, to compare a guy to a guy like Smitty that played for us and became such a good player all the time, and Smitty wasn't even a pick. He was a free agent guy. So we just think the history and the pedigree is such that he'll develop and be a good player.
Thank you, Russ. Appreciate the insight on Noah. Thank you, T-Bird fans, for joining us. In our next episode of Top Shelf, we're going to talk to Russ about our 8th round pick, Reed Schaefer. Thanks for joining us, T-Birds fans.